Bhavai Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening. We're here in the library of the Vedanta Society because of vigil going on in the temple. And we've got a few more folks coming in here to join us. We're reading a course from the Tales and Parables of Sri Ramakrishna, and they've included some excerpts from his life where he would narrate various episodes and things in his life. So it's not just tales and parables in the usual sense, but sometimes it's incidences as well, sort of making a tale of something that happened to him. So we're going to start in the section about aspects of the divine, and the one entitled Few, Very Few Are They.
A rich man said to his servant, "Take this diamond to the market and let me know how different people price it. Take it first of all to the eggplant seller." So the servant took the diamond to the eggplant seller. He examined it, turning it over in the palm of his hand, and said, "Oh, brother, I can give 9 seers of eggplants for it." "Oh, friend," said the servant, "a little more. Say 10 seers." "No, I've already quoted above the market price. You may give it to me if that price suits you." The servant laughed. He went back to his master and said, "Oh, sir, you would give me only 9 seers of eggplants, not one more." He said he offered more than the market price. The master smiled and said, well, now take it to the cloth dealer. The other man deals only in eggplants. What does he know about a diamond? The cloth dealer, he has a little more capital. Let us see how much he offers for it. So the servant went to the cloth dealer and said, "You buy this? How much will you pay for it?" And the merchant said, "Yes, it's a good thing. I can make a nice ornament out of it. I'll give you 900 rupees for it." "Brother," said the servant, "offer a little more. I'll sell it to you. Give me at least 1,000 rupees. The dealer said, "Oh, friend, don't press me for more. I've offered more than the market price. I cannot give a rupee more. Suit yourself." Laughing, the servant returned to his master and said, "Now he won't give a rupee more than 900. He too said he had quoted above the market price." Then the master said, "Take it to a jeweler. Let us see what he has to say." So the servant went to the jeweler. The jeweler glanced at the diamond and said, "I'll give you 100,000 rupees for it." One offers a price for an article according to one's capital. Can all comprehend the indivisible Satchidananda? Only 12 rishis could recognize Ramachandra. All cannot recognize an incarnation of God. Some take him for an ordinary man, some for a holy person, but only a few recognize him as an incarnation.
And some took him for a crazy person. So, yes, indeed, people look at things from their own perspective and their own standpoint. And, of course, you might even get different prices from different jewelers. Some might try to cheat you and offer much less, thinking that you don't know anything about jewelry yourself. And, of course, it also depends on what you value. If you don't value jewels, then you're not going to pay for them. Similarly, if you're not looking for a spiritual teacher or a great soul, you're probably not terribly interested in finding one, and so you're not going to notice them when they come your way. So it's those who are ready to see the good and the extraordinary and the qualities of an incarnation that are ready to see them. If those that aren't ready just won't really recognize them at all. We've got a couple more coming. Maybe we get a couple more chairs out. Let's see if these are people dealing in eggplants or diamonds. All right, so we just finished reading the parable about taking a diamond to various merchants and finding that, of course, the jeweler was the one that knew the true value of a diamond, not the eggplant salesman or the cloth merchant. They only knew what things about food and clothing. They didn't know about jewels. So similarly, some people recognize incarnations and some don't. So now we're going to read the parable called She Came and Went Away.
By the roadside on the way to Ramakrishna is Raya's lake. Bhagavata, the Divine Mother, was born as his daughter. Even now, people hold an annual festival there in the month of Chaitra in honor of his divine daughter. Rajit Roy was the landlord of that part of the country, and through the power of his tapasya, he obtained the Divine Mother as his daughter. He was very fond of her. She too was much attached to him, but she hardly left his presence. One day, Rajat Roy was engaged in the duties of his estate. Oh, he was very busy. The girl, with her childlike nature, was constantly interrupting him, saying, "Oh, Father, what's this? What's that?" Rajat Roy tried with sweet words to persuade her not to disturb him. "My child, please leave me alone. I have much work to do." The girl would not go away. The last, absent-mindedly, the father said, "Get out of here." On this pretext, she left home. A peddler of conch shell articles was going along the road. From him, she took a pair of bracelets for her wrists. When he asked for the price, she said that he could get the money from a certain box in her home. Then she disappeared. Nobody saw her again. In the meantime, the peddler came to the house and asked for the price of his bracelets. When she was not to be found at home, her relatives began to run about looking for her. Rajat Roy sent people in all directions to search for her. The money owed to the peddler was found in the box, as she had indicated. Rajat Roy was weeping bitterly when people came running to him and said that they had noticed something in the lake. They all ran there and saw an arm with conch shell bracelets on the wrist being waved above the water. A moment later, it disappeared. Even now, people worship her as the Divine Mother at the time of the annual festival. By dint of austerity, a man may obtain God as his son. God reveals himself in many ways, sometimes as man, and sometimes in other divine forms made of spirit.
I think there are several lessons here. First, of course, the man was very devout and got the blessings of having the Divine Mother as his daughter. But then, as we could say that very often the divine comes to us in we don't necessarily recognize it. We get so distracted by other things and we don't take the opportunity of being in the presence of the divine when we could. And so that's like him ignoring the daughter when he's very busy with his business. And so then her disappearing into the lake, of course, that would indicate that the Divine Mother is immanent in the world, and if we don't recognize her, then she disappears. Very much like the story of Sita at the end of the Ramayana. When people don't recognize her purity and her divinity, she disappears back into Mother Earth. So in this story, the Divine Mother, as the daughter, is disappearing back into the lake. And of course, the waving of the wrist with the bracelet was simply to indicate that that's who it was, so that we would know, and he would know what had happened, that he had lost his connection with the divine by being too preoccupied by his business and not preoccupied enough with the Divine Mother. All right, let's look at Thus Saw Arjuna.
According to the Jnani, there is no incarnation of God. Krishna said to Arjuna, "You speak of me as an incarnation of God. Let me show you something. Come with me." Arjuna had followed Sri Krishna a short distance when Krishna asked him, "What do you see there?" Arjuna replied, "A big tree with blackberries hanging in bunches." Krishna said, "Those are not blackberries. Now go nearer and look at them." So Arjuna went nearer and saw that there were Krishnas hanging in bunches. "Do you see now," said Krishna, "how many Krishnas like me have grown there?"
So yes, this idea of an incarnation is a very inscrutable one and very difficult for people to understand. And of course, Arjuna had the blessing of seeing Krishna in his divine form, which encompassed the whole universe, and it was so overpowering, he had to ask for it to not last too much longer. Similar to the experiences of people on Kalpataru Day when Sri Ramakrishna would give them various visions. And they enjoyed the bliss for a while, but then they realized they couldn't function very well in the world unless their minds came down a bit. But this idea that there is more than one incarnation is certainly illustrated by this particular parable. And of course, the traditional idea in Vaishnavism is that there are 10 incarnations of Vishnu, but in this parable it sounds like there could be a lot more, and very possibly. I think the idea of the 10 incarnations of Vishnu again is just one particular tradition and one way of looking at it, and not necessarily the last word. All right, well, let's look at Nothing is Impossible for Him.
This is Ramakrishna speaking, of course. One day, in course of a conversation about God, Mathur Babu observed, God too must abide by his own laws. He has no power to transcend them. "What an absurd proposition," I exclaimed. "One who has made a law can repeal it at pleasure or make a new law in its place." "How can it be?" said Mathur. "A plant that produces only red flowers cannot produce flowers of any other color, white for instance, for such is the law. I should like to see God produce white flowers from a plant bearing only red flowers." "Oh, that too he can do," I said, "for everything depends on his will." But Mathur was not convinced. The next day, while taking a stroll in the temple garden, I came across the China rose plant with 2 flowers on the same stalk, one of which was red and the other snow white. I broke off the branch to show it to Mathur. He felt highly surprised at the sight of it and exclaimed, Oh, Father, I will never more argue a point with thee.
Of course, being a gardener, I've seen incidences myself where plants will suddenly bear a flower of a different color. We have a hibiscus that's supposed to be white, and there's a section of it that's producing red flowers. Actually, they're sort of white. They're white in the summer, and they get pinker and pinker during the winter when the weather gets colder and colder. But there's also a branch that's solid red, not white at all. And hybridizing camellias, I've noticed that there's some camellias that put off sports, and then you can propagate the sport. You can take a cutting of the branch that's completely different and then raise that and graft it onto many other rootstocks and get a whole bunch of them and then sell them as a new plant. So you can get sports of many different camellias. They might have a different form or a different color pattern or something of that nature. So indeed, these things happen. And of course, when you think about the ideas of evolution and how Darwin tried to explain everything by natural selection and so forth, but in order to get things to go as suddenly as they seem to do in the archaeological record, it seems like there has to be some other processes going on, and you can get more spontaneous mutations. And of course, these spontaneous mutations are under the control of the divine, because the divine permeates everything. The divine is permeating every atom in the universe. And so it can, by its own will and playfulness, decide to create things that were different than they were in the previous generation, so that evolution can take place faster when it needs to take place faster. And in times of great crisis, climate crisis and that sort of thing, that kind of thing happens. And we know these great extinction events happen over the ages and ages of the earth, where various things create a sudden climate change. It can be a shift in the poles. It can be the opening of the traps in Siberia that created huge amounts of changes in the gases in the atmosphere, which changed the climate. It can be volcanic eruptions. It can be asteroid or meteorite hits. All these things create drastic climate change, and then the earth has to adjust, and so all the organisms have to quickly evolve into various forms to fill all the empty ecological niches created by the extinction of many, many species. So indeed, the Ishvara, the Lord, has control over his Maya. He is not controlled by his Maya, he controls his Maya. All right, to him, these are mere dust and straw.
Once a thief broke into the temple of Vishnu and robbed the image of his jewels. Master Babu and I went to the temple to see what the matter was. Addressing the image, Mater said bitterly, "Oh, what a shame, Lord, you are so worthless. The thief took all the ornaments from your body, and you couldn't do a thing about it." Thereupon I said to Mater, "Shame on you. How improper your words are to God. The jewels you talk so much about are only lumps of clay. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is his consort. Do you mean to say that he should spend sleepless nights because a thief has taken your few rupees? You must not say such things."
So you see, the incidents in Sri Ramakrishna's life in the centuries to come will be like parables that are told in other contexts, like these other parables. So we can feel lucky that we're getting these parables at an early stage here. So, of course, the Mudger's idea of the value of the deity was pretty warped here. The value of the deity is not in how it's ornamented. The value of the deity is what it represents. It represents some aspect of the divine, and it's not how well it's decorated that creates its value. And when you think of it, the value that things have in the world, like jewels, like diamonds from the first parable, or in this parable, the various ornaments, it's a lot of it is just the perception of people. It's how people perceive it and whether it has a value. Now, of course, some things have industrial values, but these things don't tend to get their ultimate value from that. Diamonds are very important industrial to cut things because it's the hardest mineral. But that's not why diamonds are so expensive. It's because people value them. They think they look pretty. Same thing with gold ornaments. People think they look pretty. And again, gold can be a very important metal for other uses, but that's not why it's so expensive. So a lot of why things are pricey is because of the value that people put on them, because they think a lot of times it's just because they think they look pretty and not necessarily just their utilitarian nature. And certainly an image of God is not based on its value is not based on how well it's ornamented. All right, the nature of God.
God has the nature of a child. The child is sitting with gems in the skirt of his cloth. Many a person passes by him along the road. Many of them pray to him for gems. He hides the gems with his hands and says, turning away his face, "No, I will not give any gems away." Another man comes along. He does not ask for gems. Yet the child runs after him and offers him the gems, begging him to accept them.
Well, this is getting at the nature of God as the grace of God, you could say, where it's difficult to predict when the grace of God will descend. And you might pray for certain things, pray for illumination and so forth, but it depends on the grace of God to a certain extent, and you never know when that's going to happen. So you might be like the person that gets the gems, and you might be like the person that doesn't get the gems, and so you just have to wait it out until your time comes. And when the child feels playful to give you the gems, then that will be your turn. So this is a good way to look at the manifest universe is the play of the divine. It's the Lord's play. In Shaivism, that is usually the way it's said. And Sri Ramakrishna used to talk about that aspect as well, that it's the play of the divine. So you don't have to think of it as having a purpose. You know, what is the purpose of all this manifestation? It's the Lord's play. It's his nature to play. It's the nature to manifest. Just as we have a nature to dream up dreams at night, and sometimes they're pleasant dreams and funny dreams, and sometimes they're confusing dreams, sometimes they're nightmarish, and it's just the nature of our minds to go through this dreaming process. So similarly, the whole cycle of the universe is just like that. We are the microcosm of the macrocosm. So the whole universe goes through these cycles. It goes into deep sleep where it's not manifesting, and then it decides to dream up a dream. And some of them are nice and some of them aren't so nice. And so it goes. All right, so God is under the control of his devotees. Wow. Sounds making us very powerful here. Okay.
Some Sikhs said to me in front of the Kali temple, "God is compassionate." I said, "To whom is he compassionate?" "We're revered sir to all of us," said the Sikhs. But I said, "We are his children. Does compassion to one's own child mean much? Father must look after his children. Or do you expect the people of the neighborhood to bring them up? Well, won't those who say that God is compassionate ever understand that we are God's children and not someone's elf? Should we not then address God as compassionate? Of course we should, as long as we practice sadhana. After realizing God, one rightly feels that God is our father or mother. But as long as we have not realized God, we feel that we are far away from Him and children of someone else. During this stage of sadhana, one should describe God by all His attributes. One day, Hazra said to Narendra, God is infinity. Infinite is His splendor. Do you think He will accept your offerings of sweets and bananas? Or listen to your music? That's a mistaken notion of yours. Narendra at once sank 10 fathoms. So I said to Hazra, you villain, where will these youngsters be if you talk to them like that? How can a man live if he gives up devotion? No doubt God has infinite splendor, yes, but He's under the control of His devotees. The rich man's gatekeeper comes to the parlor where his master is seated with his friends. He stands on one side of the room. In his hand he has something covered with a cloth. He's very hesitant, and the master asks him, well, gatekeeper, what have you in your hand? Very hesitantly, the servant takes out a custard apple from under the cover. He places it in front of his master and says, sir, it's my desire that you eat this. The master is impressed by his servant's devotion. With great love, he takes the fruit in his hand and says, ah, this is a very nice custard apple. Where did you pick it? Why, you must have taken a great deal of trouble to get it. God's under the control of His devotees. King Duryodhana was very attentive to Krishna and said to him, well, please have your meal here. The Lord went to Vidura's hut. He was very fond of his devotee. He ate Vidura's simple rice and greens as if they were celestial food.
And I think it's important to remember that we're in different stages, and sometimes people jump to conclusions about how they should act based on stages that are much further down the spiritual path. And I think in line with the previous parable where we looked at God as having playful, childlike nature, we can likewise be playful and childlike with God and think of how we can please Him and have devotional attitudes towards Him and give Him simple things, simple pleasures that He will enjoy, just like a child would enjoy a nice custard apple. So keep that in mind. Don't get so sophisticated that you think that God's not going to accept simple offerings. In fact, in the Gita it says that He'll accept the simplest of offerings, even a leaf, if nothing else is available. So I think that's probably the best advice from this parable. It's a little, I think this feels like there's something missing in the story. Where did he get the custard apple? Did he, and why was he keeping it hidden? I mean, it's not terribly clear here exactly how that fits into this story. But perhaps there's more if we went back to the gospel itself and found out the context of that. All right, let's look at the next one. All else is unreal.
The truth is that God alone is real. And all else is unreal. Men, universe, house, children, all these are like the magic of the magician. The magician strikes his wand and says, "Come delusion, come confusion." He says to the audience, "Open the lid of the pot and see the birds fly into the sky." The magician alone is real, and his magic unreal. The unreal exists for a second and then vanishes. Shiva was seated in Kailas. His companion Nandi was near him. And suddenly a terrific noise arose. "Revered sir," asked Nandi, "what does that mean?" And Shiva said, "Ravana is born." That is the meaning. And a few minutes later, another terrific noise was heard. "What is this noise?" Nandi asked. And Shiva said, with a smile, "Ravana is dead. Birth and death are like magic. You see the magic for a second, and it disappears. God alone is real. All else, unreal. Water alone is real. Its bubbles appear and disappear. They disappear into the very water from which they rise."
Yeah, so this is the common Advaitic interpretation that God alone is real, or Brahman alone is real, all else is illusory. Illusory, I think, is probably a little bit better term than unreal. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that, the nature of Maya, you can't really say it's real or unreal. It's a mixture of both. And he also takes a position in many places that the universe is pervaded by Brahman. Everything is a manifestation of Brahman, except that, of course, we're not seeing it that way. So that's the unreal part. What we're seeing makes us think of something else, and we're not thinking of Brahman. But in the other sense, it's nothing but Brahman. And I think it was Swami Turiyananda that said, Brahman alone is real, and all else is Brahman, because there isn't anything else. There isn't anything else but Brahman. So in that sense, you see, you could say that if everything is Brahman, it has to also be real in some peculiar sense. It's just our interpretation of it that's not correct. And just as if you use this water analogy, like the waves or the bubbles or whatever, sometimes it's waves, sometimes it's bubbles. Again, while they're bubbles or waves, they're still water. They're still part of the ocean. And they're not unreal in that sense, but their manifestation as bubbles or waves is extremely temporary. When you think of how fleeting our little lives are compared to the geological age of the Earth, and the Earth is not the oldest thing by far in the universe. The universe is much older than that. And of course, if we take this idea that the universe, as we were saying, can go back into seed form and then come back into manifestation and back into seed form and so forth and so on, it's eternal. There's no end to the universe. It's ageless in that sense. So our lives are indeed very fleeting, just as this birth and death of Ravana seemed like only moments apart in the cosmic scheme of things. All right, the lure of divine Leela, Leela meaning play.
After the destruction of Ravana at Rama's hands, Nikasha, Ravana's mother, began to run away for fear of her life. Lakshmana said to Rama, "Revered brother, please explain this strange thing to me. This Nikasha is an old woman who has suffered a great deal from the loss of her many sons, and yet she's so afraid of losing her own life that she's taking to her heels." Rama bade her come near, gave her assurance of safety, and asked her why she was running away. Nikasha answered, "Oh Rama, I'm able to witness all this Leela of yours because I'm still alive. I want to live longer so that I may see the many more things that you will do on this earth.
Strange reply, isn't it? It's like listening to a soap opera and having, some horrible episode where everything's going wrong and you can't wait to see the next episode. Even though the whole drama is just full of all sorts of misery and suffering and people losing their jobs and people losing their lives and all sorts of difficulties happening, and people getting divorced and all sorts of crazy things, people getting ill. And you can't wait to see the next episode. So since that's the nature of our existence, remember in Alice in Wonderland, she got very discouraged at many times, but then she'd say, well, even though everything seems so peculiar, this is kind of an interesting place, isn't it? And that's kind of the way we are. Lewis Carroll had so many insights into human nature. All right, a peacock that tasted opium.
A man once fed a peacock with a pill of opium at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The next day, exactly at the same time, the peacock came back. It had felt the intoxication of the drug and returned just in time to have another dose. Similarly, a devotee who had the good fortune to meet the Master felt an uncontrollable desire to meet him again and again.
And B.F. Skinner thought he had invented response things, or a stimulus response. Here it is, we have an episode that happened long before Mr. Skinner did his experiments and giving rewards to affect behavior. So we have the ability to change the behavior of the peacock by giving a reward of such. Any reward would have done, didn't have to be intoxicating, could have just been food. And of course, lots of experiments with animals are now done with that kind of thing, where they're trained to do various things by giving them a little reward. And of course, the ultimate one is where they hooked up electrodes to poor little mice that stimulated their pleasure center. And so all they had to do was hit this little lever and it stimulated their pleasure center to the point where they didn't even care about eating, and they eventually starved to death. So that's how bad some intoxicating things can be. Things can be so intoxicating that you go after them over and over again, even though it destroys you. So, of course, the idea here is we noticed in Sri Ramakrishna's life that he gave divine bliss just by being in his presence, and so devotees would come back over and over again just to be in his presence. And of course, that made his parting away very painful, but they all came to learn that the Master was ever present, even after the dropping of the physical body. Just because he dropped his physical body didn't mean he wasn't present. And many of the later Swamis would also tell us that Sri Ramakrishna is a living presence now, and you need to tune into that and keep in touch with that living presence. And that is like giving yourself a nice reward by coming here, doing meditation, reading scriptures, reading books, and so forth and so on, singing spiritual songs. All of these things are ways of giving yourself spiritual rewards and keeping in touch with the cosmic Ramakrishna. All right, we have time for a couple more. These are short. We got a couple of long ones there. Now these are short. Ka, ka, ka.
There was a pundit who was tremendously vain. He did not believe in the forms of God. But who can understand the inscrutable ways of the divine. God revealed himself to him as the primal power, and the vision made the pundit unconscious for a long time. After regaining partial consciousness, he uttered only the sound ka, ka, ka. He could not fully pronounce Kali.
This is a warning that we've seen several times where people get too stuck in one particular spiritual aspect. And so this pundit was stuck in the idea that he didn't need to believe in God with form. And Ramakrishna had some of his disciples like that. Vivekananda started out that way. He didn't like a lot of the Brahmo Samaj people. That was kind of their shtick, you could say. They didn't like God with form. And of course, Sri Ramakrishna knew that it's perfectly fine to think of God with form or God without form, and he wanted his disciples to know that, so they could teach other people that they were okay in one way or the other. But it's much easier to think of God with form, of course. If you try to think of God as infinite, what do you grab onto? How do you grab onto the infinite? It's like a giant beach ball. Well, you can hold a baseball, you can hold a basketball, you can even hold one of those exercise balls. It's just about a yard wide. But suppose you had a ball that was a mile wide. There's nothing to grab onto, and its curvature is so slight you can't hold on to it. It's just going to slip right out of your hands. And so the infinite God in its infinite nature is like that. Trying to meditate on the infinite, there's nothing to hold your mind to. And so that's why we have forms of God, so that we can grab onto it some way. All right, inscrutable are the ways of God.
How can we understand the ways of God through our small intellects? As Bhishma lay dying on his bed of arrows, Pandava brothers and Krishna stood around him. They saw tears flowing from the eyes of the great hero. Arjuna said to Krishna, "Friend, how surprising it is, even such a man as our grandsire Bhishma, truthful, self-restrained, supremely wise, and one of the 8 Vasus weeps through Maya at the Tower of Death." Sri Krishna asked Bhishma about it. Bhishma replied, "O Krishna, you know very well that this is not the cause of my grief. I'm thinking that there is no end of the Pandava's sufferings, though God himself is their charioteer. Thought like this makes me feel that I've understood nothing of the ways of God, and so I weep."
Yeah, we often don't understand why things happen in the world. God's nature is inscrutable, and that's why it's important to try to see it as a drama or a play or the Leela of God, and to, as much as possible, be the witness of it and not be so distressed by it. But of course, the Pandavas didn't suffer forever. They managed to get out of their difficulties. But we shouldn't get too grief-stricken over the ways of the world, unfortunately, even though they sometimes depress us greatly. It seems like there's an increased amount of natural disasters and man-made disasters, and you do what you can about them, but you don't get too bogged down in thinking that everything is always going to be miserable. It's simply the inscrutable ways of the Lord. I think that's just about our time, and we'll close with a chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Mudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see, filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is, from Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. Well, nice to see you all.